Good morning and welcome to the February 4th, 2025 meeting of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. The voice you hear is not that of our Sarah Carroll, who is under the weather today. You'll have to suffer along with me as the acting chair for today's hearing. Before we get started, I wanted to say that the voice of LPC, Gregory Calla, the voice that we've been hearing for several years now, doing such a wonderful job organizing our hearings. This is his last hearing. And we are so sorry to lose Gregory, but he's found a new position at NYCHA, so he'll still be with the city and available, I think, to receive our friendship over time. But he will be leaving the Landmarks Preservation Commission. Gregory, we're sorry to see you go, but good luck in your new assignment. With that, I'll ask our counsel, Mark Silverman, to call the roll.
Chair Carroll, Vice Chair Bland,
Here.
Commissioner Chapin,
Here.
Commissioner Chen, Commissioner Chu, Commissioner Ginsburg,
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Jefferson,
Here.
Commissioner Lutfi, Commissioner Master.
Here.
You ready to start? All right.
Okay, we're going to start today's Preservation Department agenda with public meeting items. But first, I do just want to note while we are holding this hearing and meeting in person today, those at home can also join the meeting via video conference and Zoom by visiting our website for that appropriate link. All right, we'll start with public meeting item number 1, LPC 24-0529, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 1887, lot 11. 129 Vanderbilt Avenue in the Wallabout Historic District. This is an Italianate style row house built in 1854-55. The application is to enlarge a rear addition. This was last presented at the public hearing of August 13th, 2024. No action was taken at that time. The staff will be presenting the proposal this morning, but the owner and applicant are also here. Should there be any questions, we can open the proceedings at that time. And just also to note that when this was originally presented back in August, I think there was a mix-up with the presentation. So what was shown on the screen was not exactly what the architect and owner had intended at that time, and they tried to describe the proposal, but it started to get a little confusing. So we have them back here today with all of that information clarified and with the proposed design. So turn it over to Richard.
Good morning, Commissioners. Richard Lowry, Preservation staff. I'll quickly go through the presentation with the additional details that the Commission requested at the last public hearing. Wynn Fitzpatrick, the owner, and Errol Crawford, the architect, are here should there be any questions. So again, we have a residential row house in the Wallabout Historic District. We got just to quickly go over the block diagram, and the area in pink is the proposed addition. So it's a sort of a full extrusion with a little rear L tacked on. The extrusion that will align with the neighbor to the right, and the rear addition is slightly proud of the neighbor to the left. Just a quick axon showing the row house with the proposal. Okay, and this is the existing rear elevation, and it's just shown to know that really only the upper floor is visible from the public thoroughfare. And here's the proposed rear addition. Just to show where the current line, so that's where the existing building is here, this dashed line, and the extrusion on one side out to align with the neighbor here. And this is where the alignment of the existing neighbor on this side, and it's just a little bump out of the wing wall and the rear addition. And just the section again showing the rear L. And this is just again to remind you the photo from across the block, and what we're seeing in the foreground is the garage of the row house on this side. And you can see those back upper floor windows of the subject property, which is the only thing that you can see from the street. Oops. And just to show the existing photos again of the rear line of the additions, and you can see the neighbor to the left here. And one of the things that the commission requested was a rendering just showing the proposal in relation to the adjacent buildings. And again, just a detailed section that we saw last time. But that's basically it. If there are any questions?
I have a question. Were these buildings or they maybe, well, we don't know really. If we need to open the proceedings if we're going to ask to speak. I have a motion, Commissioner Master, to open the proceedings. A second, Commissioner Goldblum. All right, now you can go up and speak. Yeah, thanks.
William Fitzpatrick, from one of the owners. We believe there was a T-porch at the back, the age of the house is consistent with that. On the inside, with the existing one floor level, one floor of 1/3, fairly well, the rest slopes down. And then the door in the dining, but now the dining room, looked like they were external doors.
So the design is, it looks to me as if it's trying to keep the idea of a T-porch, but not the exact form. Any other commissioners have questions? Michael? No? Okay. Then I think I'll ask, we can close the hearing? The proceeding? Don't have to, okay. Okay, then I think we're ready to discuss this application. You want to start, Commissioner Goldblum?
Okay, I think it's totally appropriate. I think it's in scale. I think the materials look good. I would just ask the staff to take a look at the details of the bay window, which is rendered a bit thinly, but otherwise I think it's total.
Yep. Commissioner Jefferson?
It's a very handsome, elegant design. I think it's very good.
Commissioner Master?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Goldblum. I think he made all the points. It's appropriate.
Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I think it's reminiscent of a T-porch and very
Right.
appropriate.
And Commissioner Ginsburg?
Agreed.
Great, okay.
Appropriate.
Then I think we can ask Commissioner Goldblum to read the motion.
Regarding 129 Vanderbilt Avenue in the Wallabout Historic District, the application is to enlarge rear yard addition. I note that this building's scale, style, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Wallabout Historic District. Recommend approval, finding that the work will not eliminate any or damage any significant architectural features. The proposed work will not be visible from a public thoroughfare. That the extended rear yard addition and party wall will align with an adjacent rear addition and will be a modest increase beyond the others in the row, and that the design of the rear addition featuring wood shake siding and punched openings with multi-light windows and doors will feature a level of articulation materials palette and ratio of solid to void that is consistent with other rear yard additions to row houses within the historic district, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of the building or the historic district.
Commissioner Jefferson, would you offer a second?
Go second.
Mark, would you call roll?
Vice Chair Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 6 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Right, we'll move to the next item. That's public meeting item number 2. LPC 25-03381, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1383, lot 51, 823 Madison Avenue in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is an apartment building originally built as 2 houses in 1880 and altered in the neo-federal style by S. Edson Gage in 1996. The application is to alter the facade, replace storefront infill, and install awnings and signage. This was last presented at the public hearing November 26, 2024. No action was taken at that time. The applicants will present revisions to their proposal in response to your comments after we open the proceedings.
To open.
Sorry, call for a motion to open the proceedings. Commissioner Master, would you make a motion? Commissioner Chapin, would you second that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, proceedings are open. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Erin Ruley, Higgins, Quaysbarth and Partners. We're the preservation consultants for this project. I'm joined today by Antonio Rodriguez of Kenneth Park Architects, who's coming now, who are the architects of record. As Corey mentioned, you last saw this proposal on November 26th, right before Thanksgiving break. And this is a proposal for the new flagship store for C.H. Carolina Herrera. And they'll be occupying the 3 lower floors of the building, and then the upper floors will remain as residential. As you might recall, the proposal was for the replacement of the entire base of the building. This is all non-historic fabric as a result of 3 or 4 generations of change since the 1980s. And so replacement of the base, new storefront infill, and signage. We can go to the previous proposal here. We have the existing condition on the top and the previous proposal on the bottom. And so just as a refresher, these buildings started their lives as a pair of row houses in 1880, designed by Lamb and Wheeler. And then in 1926, completely refaced in the neo-federal style by S. Edson Gage. And the existing condition, some of the commissioners observed in the original hearing that there's a subtle asymmetry to the design of the overall building. The building to the north was originally 4 feet wider than the building to the south. So while it has a symmetrical composition, the details of it are fudged a bit to create the apparent symmetry, but there are dimensional differences. So at the hearing, the comments from the commissioners were focused on 2 primary issues: the storefront configuration and the need to have a more symmetrical composition that related better to the upper facade of the building, and the design and effect of the architectural fins at the 2nd story of the storefront. We're going to look at this in detail, but this is for commissioners that weren't at that hearing, a system of metal fins that recalls the historic awnings and treatment of shading devices on the upper floor of the storefront. And so you can see in the original proposal, we had 4 bays with no defined center line. And each of the piers was of a different dimension with a sort of a gradient effect, and each of the bays with varying dimensions. And so here on the top is the proposal, and the current proposal on the bottom. We have created a 5-bay configuration that creates a central entry, 2 flanking bays, and then the 2 bays at the outside, which one remains the residential entry to the upper floors. This design is based on the historic condition of the building, and we think that continuing, there was some question about brick versus limestone. The base of the building was historically brick in the typical of the neo-federal style, and so and that kind of underscored the lack of symmetry, I think, in the original proposal, and maybe called for a stronger assertion of that symmetry. So looking at that original condition here, it was again a central entry that led to the 2 storefronts. There were display windows at either side, and the one to the north is slightly larger to again compensate for that dimensional difference between the 2 original 1880 buildings, and then outside narrow bays for the upper floors of the residential floors above. And the piers were brick all the way down to the sidewalk, and there was a base or a stone sill below the storefronts at that time. And then just looking back to the context for this proposal, a series of approvals by the commission for brick bases on buildings along Madison Avenue, just 3 examples. But I think here you can see the similarities between our proposal and the previous proposals, carrying on that same sort of proportion and scale of the openings and the relationship with the upper facades. And of course, now with the new symmetrical composition, very consistent with these previous approvals. And then just as we start to talk about the architectural fins, we looked at other examples of awnings along Madison, how they create a distinct vocabulary. And historically, of course, they were used for weather protection, and some places sold goods under the awnings. But now they are primarily for as a sun control device and branding and identity. And so we see that sort of layered approach to the facades, the projecting awnings, and on the ground floors and the upper floors. So here is the existing condition, and this dates to a 2013 approval designed by Paige Cowley and the current proposal. So we have that central entry, a slightly larger north bay. The piers are all very close in dimension, off by inches, just to sort of mediate between the two existing structures. It's not just trying to create the symmetry of the building, but also adjusting for what are the bones of an 1880s building. And then the southernmost bay remains the entry for the residential floors, and then the outside bay is flanking on the north end, has very similar treatment to match the southernmost bay. The upper floor, the second floor, so this is a true two-story storefront. There is an occupied second floor within the retail space, and the spandrel is expressed at dividing the two floors, and then the architectural fins extend back along the second story. Here is a detail, the existing on the top and the new proposal on the bottom. Again, looking at that storefront configuration, large glazed opening with the spandrel extending across, and then the architectural fins canting back from the face of the brick. And at the time of the hearing, commissioners were questioning the approach of the architectural fins and asked us to study the dimensions, the materiality, the depth, the width, the spacing of them. We did so, and as part of that process, realized that the spacing was really important in order for the fins, the entire system to maintain its gravitas. It is a unified system. You'll see it when we're looking at renderings. It's seated within the surround of the storefront. It's all sort of a piece, and the glazing follows the canted angle back from the fins themselves and creates a sort of unitized system. So in plan, here is that central bay, putting the structure into the entry, and then here was the previous proposal for a symmetrical bay, and the current proposal. So central entry and then the flanking bays. We've also we addressed the graphics a bit. There was a full-scale mock-up built of the architectural fins, and we'll take a look at. We tried to model as closely as possible in the renderings the effect and the intent of the fins themselves, and the effect as you're walking along the street, because it is meant to be a dynamic installation. I was trying to think of what it reminded me of, and I kept thinking of a film reel, when in the old films when you see the negative lines moving. But really what I think it is more of a zoetrope, where you're seeing something moving behind a series of openings or apertures. And so as we look at the details of the fins, there's going to be a series of mock-up installations, and then married with a series of renderings to better understand how this will appear in the streetscape, and what the effect will be on the overall building and the rhythm of an avenue. So here are the proposed detail: 1 and 1/8 fins is a 2 and 3/8 space between them, and they are 2 and 3/4 inches thick. Deep there, that's actually not as deep as it was originally proposed. They've been narrowed up a little, so it actually helps in the reading as you start to get the street. And then on the top is a sort of sample of the mock-up that was built. So, two gentlemen holding up the mock-up over your head in a nighttime installation with interior light shining on it. And so we're looking from the south, and here the view is closed. But unfortunately, I don't think you can see this. What you do get in this view is a reflection on the side of the fins. Very pronounced, and it creates a contrast between the front and the back. So you start to get gradations in color so you're approaching from the south now, seeing the fins. This is the first view. Oops, sorry. And then moving as you move north, the view starts to open up, and you're seeing the openings between the fins on axis where it opens up the most. Clear views through, and then as you're starting to pass by to the north and farther north. And so then there's a series of renderings that represent these views from the north. And I would point out here that the view is closed, more closed on the second floor in this view obliquely, but it's not dissimilar from how you experience a because of the reflection when you have an oblique view. You can never see directly into storefronts unless you are in that mirror location when you're either directly in front of the storefront or just off to the north or south. So you can see in the windows to the south, you're getting the reflection off of the storefronts. So it's not creating a less transparent condition necessarily than what you see with a normalized view. Detail view from the north, the light coming through. And then this is the view on the same side of the street. So looking south, here's the storefront. So all of this is contained within the system of the storefront. So there's this deep reveal, the fins extend back, and the glass of the second story follows that plane of the fins themselves. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, questions? I guess my question is the glass on the upper level is at the back side of the 2.5 inch deep fin.
So if they're operable for cleaning purposes, but the fin would be this white line in front of the glazing that you're seeing here.
You know, until you showed that, I wasn't aware that it canted back. Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
On page 8, the symmetry of the base, based on the historical facade, or is it A on the base, B on this facade, on the existing facade?
It is based, drawn from the historic, with a series of
So, so the windows don't align really with the slots below, correct?
they do not.
Do not, okay. And the
Yeah,
center
but the
panel,
center carries this center pier and extends a little bit over to the windows, and then let's go back to the historic.
okay. So it's a kind of simulated
It is.
symmetry.
So you can see in the historic condition, the outside bays are off too.
Okay, okay, so it's based on the existing. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I think we're ready to have some thoughts. Commissioner Ginsburg, do you want to start?
Okay, so I think the revisions to the elevation in terms of the spacing is fine and is much closer to what was there historically. And
understand that given the fact there's a certain asymmetry built into the building, that you can't have a perfectly symmetrical. I actually think the metal shade light worked pretty well and are fine, but I'll be curious what other commissioners think. That is more up for discussion.
Well, when it was first presented, I felt that this building throughout its history had maintained a rough asymmetry, which was really lost in the previous proposal between and particularly in the lower floors. So I think these changes have established a much better relationship with the upper floors of the building, both the use of the brick and establishing a similar pattern of a slight asymmetry, which really comports very well with its history. And I think the louvered awnings are successful, and so I can present, approve this as presented.
Yeah, I actually think that the applicant did a great job in responding to our comments. They made the storefront more symmetrical and relates better to the upper floors. And I think that the reason that we had asked for that is because they changed the material from limestone to brick. So it made more sense to have that more symmetrical relationship. I think we had also asked for more details on the fins, the louvered elements. And I think they did an excellent job in showing us, how it's fairly transparent, especially when you look straight on. So I can find this appropriate.
Oh, yeah, I find the tension between symmetries of base, middle, and top, a nice tension as an architect. I can approve the base. Replace storefront info, I can approve that, appropriate. The awning I find marvelous, because the way the light would come into that, the grading of the light, the feeling of the light penetrating, that would be quite beautiful. So I'm for the metal.
Yeah, I agree. I think the design's improved significantly. The spacing of the piers feels just a lot more comfortable and natural with the building above. And I think the interesting thing about the angled blade thing is that by doing what they did, either through the rendering or through the other modifications to the details, it's become a lot more similar to the balconies above. I think that the balconies above are a significant aspect of the building's design, and the density of the angled fins starts for me to replicate that or to recall it. So I think they could work with staff to try to strengthen that relationship with looking at the dimension and materiality of those angled fins. I think it just looks less like air conditioning louvers, which was my concern last time, and I think it has to do with the spacing. So I think it's all good, and see what happens.
Good, thanks. I didn't see it first time around, but I think certainly the design is improved, looking at what was shown in November versus now. And I'm particularly admiring of the fin idea as a kind of a remembering, vague as it might be, but still remembering of awnings. And Commissioner Jefferson said they're marvelous, and I wouldn't disagree. I think it's quite good. So Commissioner Ginsburg, are you ready to read?
Yep.
Thank you.
With regards to LPC 25-03381, 823 Madison Avenue, Upper East Side Historic District, an apartment building originally built as two houses in 1880 and altered in the neo-federal style by S. Edison Gage in 1926. Application is to alter the facade, replace storefront infill, and install awnings and signage. I note that the building style, scale, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Upper East Side Historic District. I also note that the Upper East Side Historic District designation report identifies Madison Avenue as a unique commercial thoroughfare that has responded successfully to changing commercial needs and uses over time while retaining the residential character of the upper floors, and that the lower two floors of the building were reclad in limestone, and the placement and size of window openings at the first two floors has been highly altered since designation pursuant to LPC permits. I find that the alterations at the commercial base will be consistent with the continual evolution of the building and the uses of red blended brick cladding and a French blemish bond will match the material finish and bond pattern of the upper floor's cascade cladding and will reflect materials presented in the 1940s without causing removal of any historic fabric. The proposed design will maintain transparency at the commercial ground floor, which is a significant feature of the streetscape. That the modification to the width and placement of storefront openings and brick piers will maintain a rhythm and loose symmetry which relates to the facade above. That the simple design of the new black aluminum storefront featuring a low limestone curb, large single light display windows, and multi-light paired doors will harmonize with the upper portion of the building and will be consistent with other 20th century commercial alterations along Madison Avenue. That the louvered metal elements with signage at the spandrel and second floor openings will recall traditional awnings in a contemporary manner and will provide the transparency at the second floor from vantage points close to the building and will allow for light to pass through the fins to activate the second floor space even to more limited transparency, and the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of the building and the Manhattan Avenue streetscape or the Upper East Side Historic District.
Commissioner Chapin, would you offer a second?
Second?
Mark, would you call the roll?
Vice Chair Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi, abstaining. Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 7 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
We'll now move to the next item. It's public meeting item number 3, LPC 25-05644, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1377, Lot 16, 694 to 696 Madison Avenue in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is 2 neo-Greek style residences designed by J.H. Valentine and built in 1878 to 79. The application is to construct a rear addition, remove the party wall, replace storefront infill, and install interior partitions, and install awnings and illuminated signage. This was last presented at the public hearing of January 14th, 2025, and no action was taken at that time. The applicants will present revisions to the proposal in response to your comments after we open the proceedings.
Commissioners Aaron Ruley,
Just a sec, we need to open the proceedings.
All right. We need to open the proceedings. Commissioner Jefferson, would you offer a motion, and Commissioner Master a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against that? No. All right. Proceedings are open.
Good morning, Commissioners. Aaron Ruley, Higgins Place, Barth and Partners, and preservation consultants for this project. I'm joined today by Antonio Rodriguez of Kenneth Park Architects, the architects of record, and Nick Bowles, the director of store planning for Loewe. So we're back today with revisions to the proposed design, as Corey mentioned, which was originally presented on January 14th. This is the proposal for the conversion of 2 buildings, 694 and 696, for commercial use as the North American flagship for the Spanish fashion house Loewe. And as Corey mentioned, proposals for storefront replacement, new signage, removal of the party wall, and rear yard extensions. At the public hearing, let's see here, The original proposal included awnings at the storefront, awnings at all the upper floors with branding on each of the skirts, and at the rear, a full-height rear yard extension extending across all of 694 and a portion of 696, and then a 4-story extension for the part that at the north end of the building that opened up to the I'll call it a donut, but the yards beyond. And at that time, the commissioners had two primary concerns. One was the awnings, the angle and exposure of the second floor for the storefront awning, and then the branding on all of the awning skirts on the upper floors. And at the rear, commissioners asked for refinements to the design that might speak to the individuality of the buildings historically and represent in some way their layered history. Just as a bit of a refresher, the buildings had been originally constructed as neo-brick row houses, 2 in a row of 10 that occupied the full block front. And in 1912, got the extension at the front for the sort of very typical 2-story storefront condition that we see up and down Madison. And also at that time, the buildings were combined. So, and one of the stairs was taken out. So since 1912, the 2 buildings have functioned as a single building. And so today, we're going to be looking at the revised proposal that includes increasing the angle of the awning so that more of the second floor is exposed, the second floor of the storefront, and becomes more consistent with the Madison Avenue context of awnings in our block and the surrounding blocks. And then on the upper floors, a reduction in the branding on the skirt and with a composed design that represents the retail use beyond. So in this project, the retail floors include the new single floor on the first and second floors, the 3rd and 4th floor. So that's all customer facing space. So this is a scaled back version that just gives you a sense or a hint that there is public space within those floors. And then the upper floor is just plain white awnings as would be typical for upper floors of residential buildings. At the rear, there are a series of changes that we've made, including scaling back the footprint of the by the rear of the third is the full width of 696. It's a little tricky because unfortunately cut through the adjacent building that's off all of 694 ends. So we'll look at all of these as we go. And so we think that all of these changes together really address your concerns and agree. So at the front facade or the rendering, the previous proposals on the left, current proposals on the right. I think we're going to switch to the deployed awning so that you can get a sense of what this change really looks like. Increasing that angle to both the second floor, you'll get a clear view from across the street, but also much more openness as you're walking along the east side, the west side of the street. And it will not be deployed all of the time, and there is a very important design feature within the interior of the space. So the intent here is for that all to be apparent and not obscure. As I mentioned, on the upper floor, we have the design pattern at the outside base, the logo, the Nueve name at just the outside base of the building floor. And then at the center base is the anagram, which you can see larger on the storefront awning, and it gives you just a sort of sense of continuity that connects those two both sections of the building and the floor itself, which is surprisingly close to the neo-brick detailing that we see on the windows around. So in elevation, here is the existing condition and previous proposal, and then previous proposal juxtaposed with the current proposal now. So you can see the upper floors also. The upper floor is much more quiet and can consistent with the overall design, which, achieves a really high level of craftsmanship in the storefront and the overall approach to the design. And we think that the awning, the changes to the awnings really have brought that into alignment. The projection of the awning now, it'll project 5 feet, and it does have it is adjustable, so that can be modified. And then just to give you a sense of the awnings on our block, and those in the block to our north. This is the building directly north of us. That's 1900. They're double. They're first floor and floor. The block to the north, some to the brand new at the forefront of it. So it's the third floor here. This is entirely. Thought it might be helpful just to give you a sense of some of the other projects by the brand. These are 2 recent stores that have been completed, and I think what you see here is a distinct vocabulary that's carried through their design. That tile cladding, I think that's a small module in the clad surface, and the texture, that sort of textural approach, even though there's wide variation in the coloration and materiality and use. And then this play between solid and void, where we have the large apertures that are sort of cut within a solid plane. And I think what they've accomplished on Madison is really the marriage of this vocabulary and the typical arduous streetscape of Madison Avenue, where the storefront maintains double-story reading, the horizontal spandrel maintains that rhythm of the streetscape, but then allows for this interior feature that really unites it with the brand identity.
Aaron, could you pause for just a second while we swap out the mics and or batteries, Janet? We some issues with the mic, that front mic being picked up well on video feed.
Okay.
Sorry, Aaron, I have to interrupt you again. We're not picking up anything at the moment. We'll have to pause try to figure this out.
Hello? Is it coming through? Yeah. Test, test, test. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yep, sure, no problem. So at the rear, so this very specific set of conditions, there's no visibility, and we'll look at the photographs and you'll see sort of the rear yard conditions that we're dealing with. In the the previously proposed condition, we had a full height rear extension and then about an extra story on the top in order to accommodate stair bulkhead and elevator. So this is the new core for the joined building. As you know, core requirements take up a substantial amount of the footprint in contemporary conversion projects. And so this really is a critical feature for the new project in order to have a fully usable commercial space within the building. So this was the previously proposed addition that extended out to the plane of the rear facade of this building here, 22. And then the one floor down was a 4-story extension at number 696. And that sort of set within the existing top floor of the historic building, maintaining 2 window bays of that building. And so in the proposal, current proposal, the building has been, the full height rear yard extension has been set back only to the party wall line. So behind 694, maintaining the full width of 696, the top floor, the 3 windows, cornice line, and then that cornice line wraps around on the north face of the rear extension at 694. And then above that, navigating the stair bulkhead and elevator bulkhead with forms that are more traditional in approach. So a sloped bulkhead roof and a typical elevator overrun so that it breaks down the massing of that and the scale of the rear yard extension. And then at the 5th floor, fenestrating that north wall so that it comes all the way around to the window openings. And then a sill is dropped on the rear of 696 to create access for this terrace back here. That'll be usable. And we'll look at this in better views, but the parapet has also been dropped with a railing to create sort of a more active space and help with the scale and proportion of the openings back there. So a series of changes that really address the original history of the buildings, the 2 buildings, and where it is not visible from any location and where it is blocked by the adjacent building, being able to develop to the full height of the building at 694, and then expressing what's needed on the roof in a more traditional vocabulary.
Aaron, before you leave that,
Yes.
could you explain what is that ziggurat? Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's an exterior fire stair.
And why does it change from
What?
the previously proposed?
I
Because that's not your property, right?
That's not our property. No, I think it's just I think it's a modification that was made in the. Yeah, you'll see, Commissioner Bland, in the previous proposal, we didn't have any of the rooftop really developed of the adjacent buildings.
I understand.
And this
okay.
is more further.
Thanks.
Just to give you a sense again of the rear yard conditions, this is the rear facade of 696 and 694. And on this lower view, we're looking south here, so you can see where we're blocked in. And this is the roof of the existing 2-story extensions, lots of mechanical equipment and very small area. And then looking to the north, this is that exterior stair Commissioner Bland was just asking about, and then the mechanical systems that we see littered in the rear yards. And then the view to the north is the 5-story project that's now the Hermes store on 63rd Street. A little bit of the block context. Again, this entire row was historically a continuous row of row houses. You can see that the north end of the block has been really dramatically changed by the construction of earlier buildings, but most recently the project that is now Hermes on the corner. And then what exists of the remaining row here with lots of changes and that are a result of the sort of commercial version of the buildings. So when the buildings went from residential with rear yards, very small rear yards, you start to see expansion at the rear, exterior stairs, and all the mechanical equipment that's needed for the restaurant. Here is the view I mentioned earlier. This is where you can see the from in the parapet. We've dropped it down and it's now has a railing, so it opens up that corner a little bit more. The four-story extension has 2 bays of windows. On the third bay would have been partially blocked by the perpendicular building. So we have foregone the third bay so as to not have a sort of half represented blind window. These are blind windows. They're on the lot line. And given the program at the interior, it was sort of a design decision to keep those as blind windows rather than glazed. And then this is also the approach that was used in the approval for number 700 Madison, which is a sister building, 2 buildings to the north. And so that also has lot line windows that are blind and detailed the same way. In elevation, again, I would also note that the south wall, which we don't have an elevation for, but faces that 62nd Street, would be all brick as well. And then just a reminder about this context of changes. These are all similar projects where a row of row houses, a portion of which have been expanded, the full depth at the rear. As you can see, these are largely core changes as well, stair and elevators that pop up behind the buildings, but all very consistent with what's being proposed today. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Commissioners? Yes, Commissioner. We'll come back.
For the blind windows, what is that space being used?
All back of house space.
Okay, I mean,
You can see on, oh, this is cellar for the upper floors. Third floor, the stair, they have to have 2 stairs running through the building. And so there's 1 stair coming up through the back. And so that is the blind opening on the 3rd floor. And then on the 4th floor, it's continuing up there as well. And then this is I think this is just utility space, right? It has it between the 2 stairs.
got it.
Commissioner Goldblum.
I just wanted to run through those floor plans again. Were there any changes to the floor plans?
Which is there specific?
Last time I was concerned with the extent of the removal of the center wall. Yeah.
So here's the ground floor and 2nd floor plan. At the ground floor, there's that 7-foot extension that's being retained.
Yeah.
With the new column. It has not, the floor plan has not, aside from the changes needed for the compressing the stair and the elevator into the footprint of the singular building, the party wall commitment is not.
Questions? No. Okay.
Vice Chair Bland, I thought maybe I just note for, I think mostly for your benefit, I don't think you were here.
I was done. Yeah.
But I think the rest of the commissioners here were. There was a pretty thorough discussion about the work at the rear facade because it's somewhat unusual for the commission to approve removal of an entire rear facade. On the bottom, 1 building, let alone 2. But I think other than Commissioner Goldblum, perhaps there was broad support in this particular case from the comments we heard due to the fact that this corner of the block was already isolated and sort of closed off and that there were many other large additions within the donut in this particular block and along the avenue here. But the commissioners did, many of you did ask for the design to be looked at more closely at the back, even if it wasn't something visible from a public thoroughfare.
And it's completely not visible from public
Correct.
way. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And for reminding me I wasn't here. Bad me. Okay, I think we're ready for some comments. Commissioner Lutfi, do you want to start?
In the front. But I think the changes to the angle of the awning are, do the building and the applicant themselves a much better service because it lets in, it opens up the glass at the bottom. And it also allows more light into the building, into the commercial space. And then I think the changes to the awnings above are also work well. They're much more understated. On the rear, again, I was very open to the work that was going on for the reason that was stated, which was this whole area is very closed off and isolated. It's not visible. That said, I have to applaud you because I think the changes dropping the parapet and just blending it in more with the rear just works well, works better visually, and I think it's a much stronger project.
Thank you. Commissioner Master.
I think that I was largely supportive of this the first time around. But I agree with Commissioner Lutfi that that this application is much improved. I think that the awnings in the front, having them angled and increasing the visibility into the store is very helpful. And I believe that the awning, in terms of its scale and design, is much more similar to other awnings on Madison Avenue. On the awnings up above, I think I was supportive of the branding on all the awnings, but I think that the simplifying it and adding the elements of the brand and then only having the Loewe name on the ends, I think it adds a certain elegance and simplicity that is even better. In terms of the rear facade, I think that the new design has improved it significantly. As Commissioner Bland noted, it's not visible from any public thoroughfare, but the fact that you have the upper floor completely exposed and that, the slanted bulkhead, I think it's a much better design. And I think this is a very exciting project and I can find this appropriate.
I find the front facade quite elegant. It was elegant before. Now it's even the, the, the logo being shifted from one window to another. The front facade is very elegant. Rear yard addition works well. Removal of party wall, appropriate. Everything is.
I think that the signage and canopy improvements at the front are significant, but I still can't support this. And it has to do completely with the notion of the eradication of the identification of the buildings as two separate buildings. I feel that the removal of significant quantities of the interior party wall on all floors is gratuitous and is significant in terms of the structural identity of the buildings is separate. And I think that the things that they did at the backyard are significant improvements, but I still feel that the full height rear addition to the southern building is one that we don't support because it eradicates the reading of the initial volume of the building, irrespective of its visibility from the street. So for those two reasons, I cannot support it.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I can support this. I think the changes have improved it and addressed our concerns.
And Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I liked the original design originally and had some issues with the signage, which have been addressed. And I agree with Commissioner Lutfi's comments in general and on the front and also on the rear. So I can approve this as presented.
Yeah, as I can approve it as well. As was noted, I didn't see it around first time around, but I think the facade has been slightly changed and for the better. I do question how long those elegant white awnings will be white, but that's your problem. Down the road, maybe it will be gray very soon. I think the back probably is the controversial piece of this, the loss of the original brick. In this case, I can support it, given the exact configuration of that rear facade, the lack of any visibility from the public way, and the fact that there's so much other stuff happening right back there. I think for me, the public is not losing anything by losing that wall. So I can support it as well, and I think that means we have enough to support it. Where do we start? Oh, Commissioner Lutfi, yes, would you read it?
I think it's going to be a great addition. Thanks for showing your other stores as well. It was interesting to see the brand and how it expresses itself physically. In the matter of docket 25-05644, 694-696 Madison Avenue, Upper East Side Historic District, two neo-Greek style residences designed by J.H. Valentine and built in 1878-79. The application is to construct a rear addition, remove the party wall, replace storefront infill, and install interior partitions and install awnings and illuminated signage. I know that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Upper East Side Historic District. I also note that the designation report identifies Madison Avenue as a unique commercial thoroughfare that has responded successfully to changing commercial needs and uses over time while retaining the residential character of the upper floors, that the second floors of these buildings retain the historic tripartite display windows, while the infill at the ground floor was replaced prior to designation as well as pursuant to subsequent LPC permits. I recommend approval, finding that the replacement of the existing modern storefront infill with new tripartite storefront infill will maintain the rhythm of the building's historic fenestration and feature transparency characteristic of storefronts along Madison Avenue, that the retention of the existing masonry piers and introduction of a stone spandrel between the floors will maintain the proportions and articulation of the historic commercial base, that the clean, modern design of the new wood, brass, stone, and tile storefront infill featuring large display windows and frameless single light doors and side lights will be consistent with varied and creative expressions of late 20th century commercial alterations along Madison Avenue. That the presence of the proposed tile-clad proscenium primarily set behind the storefront glazing at the second floor and continuing on to the exterior recessed tile-clad doors at the ground floor will be in keeping with the history of changing fashion along Madison Avenue, which included drapery, vitrines, and distinctive storefront surrounds. And because the main window at the street wall will be clear glass, the decorative tile walls will not diminish the overall sense of transparency at the storefront. That the cove light fixture surrounding the tile proscenium is well integrated with the storefront details and will provide a subtle highlight into the infill. That the wide sloped openings at the second floor are in keeping with the variety of awnings found on storefronts along Madison Avenue. That the proposed engraved signage lettering on the spandrel is well scaled to the storefront and typical in placement. That the proposed upper floor awnings featuring white canvas and signage lettering and logos at select floors and bays will not draw undue attention to themselves. That the proposed rear yard addition will not be visible from a public thoroughfare. That the rear yards of the two buildings are cut off from central green space by the neighboring full lot buildings fronting on East 62nd and East 63rd Streets. Therefore, the proposed rear yard addition will not further diminish the central green space. That the top floor at number 696 will be retained, and the proposed full height addition at number 694 will abut the neighboring full lot building fronting East 62nd Street, thereby maintaining a sense of the original massing at number 696 and turning the corner to complete the donut when viewed from the central green space. That the proposed rear additions featuring brick cladding, a corbelled brick cornice, blind windows, and stair and elevator bulkheads and mechanical equipment at the roof level will harmonize with the materials, details, proportions, and fenestration patterns of other heavily modified rear facades, and with the mechanical and rooftop accretions in the roofscape of the block and throughout the historic district. That the removal of the party wall between the two buildings will not be perceptible from public thoroughfares through the relatively small punch window, the upper floors, from facades, and the section of the wall, street level, maintaining visual separation between. And that the proposed structural work will be done in compliance with the Department of Building Regulations under the supervision of a licensed professional engineer to protect the building's facades and the adjacent buildings.
Commissioner Master, would you offer a second?
Second.
Mark, will you call the roll?
Vice Chair Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Nope.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 6 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion passes.
Now move to public meeting item number 4. This is LPC 23-04449. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of the Bronx, Block 5813, Lot 105, 4401 Manhattan College Parkway in the Fieldson Historic District. This is a Mediterranean revival style house designed by Dwight James Baum and built in 1930 to 31. The application is to legalize removal of a staircase and construction of an above-ground pool and deck, replacement of areaway ironwork and historic gates, windows, doors, and gutters, and the installation of a balcony, awning, lighting, cameras, and speakers without LPC permits. This was last presented at the public hearing of October 8th, 2024. No action was taken at that time. The staff will present some revisions to the proposal in response to your comments. I believe the applicant is here on Zoom as well, should there be any questions. Not as long as the staff is.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Michelle Creer and Preservation Staff. This application was last heard on October 8th, 2024. The property, 4401 Manhattan College Parkway, is located at the southern end of the Fieldson Historic District on the north side of the parkway between Delafield Avenue and Henry Hudson Parkway East. The proposal includes the legalization and correction of work completed without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits throughout the property, as well as the construction of an above-ground pool and deck at the rear yard. At the public hearing, commissioners present expressed a consensus of support for several aspects to be legalized, including the replacement of railings at the walls of the front yard, the replacement of gutters and leaders at the facades, and the replacement of the non-historic front door with a multi-light front door. However, commissioners present expressed concerns about other aspects, including that the iron gate removed from the driveway was a significant feature of the site, that the awning over the front door and replacement balcony at the front facade were too contemporary and detracted from the significant features of the building, and that the cumulative effect of light fixtures, speakers, and cameras at the facade and railings and light fixtures at the railings created a cluttered appearance. The commissioners present also questioned the use of white mortar at retaining walls at the front yard and requested additional information about the topography and visibility of the proposed pool at the rear yard. The applicant has returned with a modified scope of work, which I'll take you through before letting the applicant further explain the pool and deck and add any additional information or answer your questions. So on this slide, you can see on the bottom left the condition of the property prior to the completed work and as it existed at the time of designation. And on the right is a more recent aerial photo. Here you can see the gate at the driveway as it existed at the time of designation on the left, and then the gate installed without permits on the right. In addition, the ironwork of the walls. Here are some additional close-up photos, which also show the light fixtures that were installed at the stone piers. On the bottom in this slide are two of the masonry openings at the first floor of the front facade where single light windows and doors were installed. These two openings no longer had their historic infill at the time of designation. Here you can see additional alterations that were made to the front facade. A wrought iron balcony was removed and a larger stucco balcony with metal and glass railings were replaced it. The doors of the balcony were also replaced with new single light doors. At the main entrance, wood brackets were removed and wood timbering, seen here on the left above this non-historic awning, were stuccoed over, and then a metal and glass awning was installed, shown here. So here are some more views of those locations where you can also see some of the light fixtures, cameras, and speakers that were installed without permits. This slide shows the former copper gutters and leaders and black finished metal ones that were installed. The gutters installed appear to be in keeping with the profiles and details of the historic copper gutters. Here you can see all of the locations of the new fixtures at the facades. Note that the rear facade is not visible from the street. And here's the original staircase that was removed to construct the pool. Again, the architect will talk a little bit more about this in a little bit more detail later. So the proposal is now to replace the driveway gate installed without permits with one that closely matches the historic gate. Please note that the design has changed since this slide was first made. The architect didn't have time to change it before today's meeting. The proposal is to match the primary details of the historic gate while eliminating the name Casa Margarita and then the light fixture that had existed at the gate. The other details would match. And they are also proposing to remove the balcony that was installed without permits and install a new metal balcony matching the historic one based on evidence in photographs from before it was removed. The architect is also proposing to tint the mortar at the walls to better match the historic appearance of the mortar before it was repointed. In terms of fixtures at the front facade, the projecting cameras will be removed and new ones that comply with the commission's rules will be installed. The black finished light fixtures at the second floor adjacent to the door at the balcony will be replaced with white finished fixtures. And the light at the second floor on the upper right here would be removed. The proposal is to retain the existing speakers at the first floor, which are located here and here. In addition, the applicant is proposing to install custom applied muntins adhered to the exterior of the first and second floor doors that do not currently have a multi-light configuration and at the picture window. These would match the details on the exterior of the muntins throughout the facades on the other windows that were replaced. And now I believe we have the architect here on Zoom who is joining us remotely to explain the pool and answer any questions.
We do need to open the proceedings first now.
Oh, I need a vote to open the proceedings. Commissioner Master, would you?
So moved.
Commissioner Lutfi, would you second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Proceedings are open.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, just state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Stefano Morisi of DYO Design Office. I apologize I couldn't attend in person, but I think so. Michelle explained all the other elements that of the main facade that we wanted to modify and to address all the items that were brought up in the last meeting. So mainly, I think we will, with the design of the gate and the balcony, we will go through, I imagine, shop drawings from the fabricator and to be approved by landmarks. And we will try to propose a more an image more similar to the existing ironwork. For the back area, as we noticed in the other images that Michelle showed, the back, the original staircase that we see on the plan on the right before the driveway, that was removed. And at the moment, we only have a so they started work also for the pool itself, and with concrete work for the support of the new terrace in the back. So the pool will have a terrace that will be connected to the first floor, as you can see in the section, and at the same level of the terrace will be the pool toward the backyard. On the side, we will have a staircase that will lead to the driveway with a parapet in metal, in black metal. All this is not visible from the road, and that's a picture from the sidewalk. So everything is behind the house, and it's not visible at all. Apart from this, all the work, all the stone work, the cement work will be stuccoed like the house, and all the ironwork will be painted black like the existing windows. On the pool area, we will install stone pavements in blue stone, and yeah, but all this is not visible from the front. Michelle, if you could go back to the facade, to the main facade, I just want to explain the changes. So yeah, so for the cameras, before we had 360 cameras, security cameras that were on the facade. So we decided to propose a much smaller, it's a 1-inch thick camera that would go under the elements of the entry and the balcony. So these will not be visible from the facade. The other items that we were changing is the lights. So the lights will be white, will be much smaller than the existing, about half the size of the existing that were black. And also there will be a light under the removed panel, the removed awning in the front. So the light will be right under the window, that part that comes out from the in front of the entry, that covers the entry. And other elements is the windows. The windows, we are applying muntins, that horizontal elements that would be glued directly to the existing glass. And this will be for the fixed window, for the a large door, accordion door that goes to on the left, that goes into the main space. This will be for the balcony window and for the entry window. And yes, the rest for the tinting of the grout that was in the previous slide, A102. We just wanted to more mimic the stone and go closer to a tint that is closer to the stone. So a grayish brown tint, and this, I imagine, we would sample it with photos. The same for the ironwork, we will sample through shop drawings made by the vendor. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, Commissioner, questions? Yeah, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Thank you. So the windows, you're basically gluing muttons on the outside, but not replacing them with true divided lights or something that looks like that. Is that correct?
Yes, because it's insulated glass, so we would prefer to do that.
With insulated glass, so, right. The wood timbering and brackets at the entrance are covered. Those will not be uncovered in what you're proposing?
Oh, so we didn't do a probe. We would like to probe that. We couldn't, we would need to probe and see the existing. I think the existing is still there. So we could open that and.
Thank you.
Yeah. We didn't have a chance to probe.
Mr. Jefferson. Oh, I thought you had a question.
Yeah, I do. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
go.
The gate, the front gate. Are you replicating the existing that we see, or you're doing another gate? You're not replicating the existing gate.
So to Michelle, we have presented a gate that was similar to the existing, had let's say the subdivisions, the bottom part, the top, how it was divided. But then we really decided that she suggested to go to us more similar to the existing, so what is there now, without the lettering, the big N in the front, which was.
The issue I
I
have
think you mean the
is that
historic, not what's there now, right?
the issue I have is that the existing gate, the original gate, had cast elements in it. And what you're doing is just kind of using linear elements to make the decoration. And the beauty of the original gate was these cast elements, the weight of it. It was a beautiful gate, and I don't think you're going to be able to get that feeling without cast elements.
Well, I think with iron work and iron plates, we'll be able to get the same decorations. I mean, by what I see in the original, we have a main frame that is in flat steel, a flat iron frame, and all the other elements, all the curved elements are in flat iron. So I think we should be able to mimic it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Master.
Yes. Can you help me out? I'd like to see the light fixtures at the piers and the lights at the picture windows again.
I think this one shows the pictures, the fixtures at the piers pretty well. They're
Yeah.
the ones top of all of the stone piers.
Mhm.
And then the other ones you said were at the
The
facade.
picture window, the
Oh, you-
lights at the picture window.
existing.
It's down. Yeah.
And where are the lights? Oh, right.
The lights are.
I think it's down on another page in G106 or 7.
107.
There.
Are you talking about the second floor light fixtures or the?
At the picture window, I think there are lights at the
So
picture window.
There aren't any lights at the picture window, but they are at the second floor, next to the balcony.
Okay.
There.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, those
thank
are being replaced. Yeah, they're all being replaced.
Those would be replaced with smaller white finished fixtures.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, the front entrance, the awning is I'm sorry, is the awning staying like that, or is it
No, they're proposing to remove the awning.
just remove it completely
Yes.
without replacement? Okay. That, I just wanted to clarify that. And the balcony, what's the detail on the new balcony? Do you have something?
So it would be,
Yeah, on A101.
sorry, which sheet?
A101. A101 should be the bell.
While they're finding the right slide, the intent with that balcony is to remove the one that's there and replace it with a new metal balcony that matches the historic
Right.
feature
Okay.
that was removed.
So they could work with the staff on that. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's okay.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I remember when this was first presented, the owner was not present and we had no explanation of why all of this work was done without review with the commission. Do we have any explanation now?
I know that a lot of this work was done by the previous owner. And this was also a letter, the present owner presented a letter to the board, not to the board, to the village. And he presented a letter showing, telling what was not done by him, because like the balcony and the gate was not modified by him.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my question as well. What brought us to this point? Did you just forget we're in a historic district and you didn't care? But now I'm hearing it was the previous owner who perpetrated a lot of these changes without.
Some of the changes were, this was a question by the community board. And when we had the meeting with the community board, they asked us a letter explaining what was done by the present owner and what was done by the previous, and most of these items were done by the previous, and he signed a letter that was sent to them. Yeah.
All right. Well, what happened happened. So I have a couple of other questions. One is to Corey, I guess. Do we have any history of glue on to double pane glass muttons?
Yeah, I was actually going to address that. So thanks for asking that question. The commission has at times approved modifications to windows which were not originally built with muntins to allow them to be sort of retrofit with this type of an attachment. And generally this involves working with staff to make sure it's as permanent as it can be, considering it is sort of an aftermarket change to the window unit. But I think what the commission often considers is, in addition to trying potentially not to waste something new that was just
Right.
built and installed, but to think about, is this something that you would perceive from the street? So certain buildings are situated better than others for that. They're further away. They're up on a hill, perhaps like this one is, where the distance itself makes it much harder to tell that this was done after the fact, and also may make it harder to tell that it doesn't have the spacers between the glass or the interior grille versus something that might be right on the street. So I think that's what's generally considered, and at times the commission has approved such a request.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and furthermore, my own thoughts on this are that if there's ever time when staff is going to be needed to oversee very closely every bit of this change. I think this application is proof of that need. Where did I start? Did I start with you? Oh, we're just asking questions. Sorry, exactly. All right, so yeah, we're sort of morphing into now our official opinions. You want to start, Commissioner Ginsburg?
Okay, so as I think we said last time, this is unfortunate. A lot of the issues have been addressed. I think things can be worked with staff and they need to be worked closely. I'm not totally convinced on the gate and balcony details, but if work with staff to make sure we're matching the original. I think the wood timber and brackets above the entrance that were covered and removed should be added back in, or if doing probes found to still be there, that would be better. I'll be interested what the others say about the muttons. I guess since they're non-visible, I can live with it.
Okay, Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, this was actually originally a fairly charming little house and kind of had an awful lot happened to it. But, you know, some of the things aren't really, I think, too much of an issue. The gutter replacement is okay. And the pool area and the staircase, I think, is not visible and also, you know, not really making a huge change to the house. And, you know, most of the window replacement, I think, is okay. They're removing that awning on the front. I guess there's an issue about the wood timbering and brackets that were removed. I don't know how, I'd like to hear what other people have to say about that, I guess. I think that I made a suggestion about the grout simply because the walls seem to be really calling a really lot of attention to itself because of the stone appearance. And I don't know if that's the right solution, but and just sort of quieting it down was the aim and making it look more like the original wall. I think that the replacement of the gate and the balcony are great, and work with the staff on that to get the details right. It seems that there is still some excessive light fixtures in this. I think in the maybe the ones on the piers just don't seem appropriate, and that they should be removed. But and I think that's it. I think, you know, with working with the staff on a lot of the details, I think I can approve this presentation at this point.
Thank you. Commissioner Lutfi?
So I think actually this is a little confusing, and it might be the presentation. It might be because there are changes that are happening in real time. So we're not seeing all of them, which makes it a little more difficult for us. But of course, we're working to move this forward in a positive way. So I agree with my fellow commissioners that some of these changes are very positive changes, particularly the change to the gate, restoring it, and also the balcony. And we're not seeing that because it's happening in real time. So it is very important, as Mark and Diana have said, that the applicant work closely with the staff on the details. Same with small issues like the grout. I'm also fine with whatever changes have been made to the pool and the deck. And from a materiality standpoint and I agree about the fact that the wood timbering and the brackets should either be restored or replaced in a way that is consistent with what was there. And I'm not 100%. I know some light fixtures are being removed, which is positive. Some are being changed to white, which is also positive. But there, as Diana said, there may be some others. It's not clear. And again, I think the applicant needs to work closely with staff so this home can be, finished in a way that that enables it to be exist in a positive way within the district. I'm okay with the buttons on the windows, by the way, because it's really not that visible.
Yeah, there's a lot of changes here that need to be approved. I think I'm just going to go straight to the ones that that I'm going to comment on rather than the ones that we're approving. And I'm going to say that I agree with the other commissioners that the wood timbers and brackets need to be restored. I think that the applicant needs to work very carefully with staff on the details of the gate, the gate and the balcony, as well, and the light. I think on either side of the little balcony above the picture window. I understand that they're doing that in white, but I think it's very important. The details here are going to be extremely important. In addition, I think that the light fixtures at the piers should be removed. Other than that, I can find this appropriate.
Commissioner Jefferson.
A lot. Structure above ground cooling. I find that appropriate. That's the major construction. I find the details of the other issues, as other commissioners have said, should be really work with staff. The one issue that I find the gate very beautiful. And I would like to see a closer replication of that, just because it's such a handsome gate. But I agree with all the comments of fellow commissioners.
How about the wood timbering and bracket? Bring it back. Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's everybody but me. Yeah, I think this is a really sad example of what can happen when people don't come to Landmarks Commission and just start working. This wonderful house has been robbed of its history in many ways, and the details, even those that we're going to probably approve and bring back, are still not going to have the patina, the history, the original workmanship that was lost. So I think it's kind of sad all around. I wonder where the gate is, by the way. Maybe it's available still on eBay. In any event, I can approve it as well, echoing my fellow commissioners who've just spoken. But again, I'll just reemphasize how important it will be that staff is sitting right on top of every little thing here, because anything could go wrong and not bring back what we're thinking we're bringing back. I think the gate being, I think I understood it to be wrought iron. And if it is, that's a huge step. It's not hollow metal. It's not steel. It's wrought iron, which is the way the original gate was made. So these things are crucially important. So I think I started with Commissioner Ginsburg. So if you can read the motion, sir.
Quick question, the lights on the piers, we had one comment on that. Is that something?
Yeah, lights on the piers. Is that
Sorry?
to be removed?
Okay.
Yeah. And I want to emphasize also the bracket, the wood bracket, should come back.
With regard to LPC 23-044494401 Manhattan College Parkway, Fieldston Historic District, a Mediterranean revival style house designed by Dwight James Baum and built in 1930-31. Application is to legalize the removal of staircase, construction of above-ground pool and deck, replacement of areaway ironwork and historic gates, window, door, and gutters, and the installation of balconies, awnings, lighting, camera, and speakers without landmark preservation permits. I note that the building style, scale, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Fieldston district. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the staircase that was removed and pool deck to be completed are not visible from any public thoroughfare. That the materiality of the pool deck featuring white finished stucco cladding and black finished metal railing will be harmonious with the existing building. That the railing at the stone wall that was removed were typically early 20th century ironwork and were not unique or significant feature of the site. That the black finished metal railing are simple and designed in keeping with modern metal work found at the building of this type and style and age. That the historic door and first floor window with the front facade were removed prior to designation of the historic district. Therefore, the replacement of the modern door and windows did not result in the loss of historic fabric. That the multi-light primary entrance door is only visible at a distance from an oblique angle from public thoroughfares and harmonizes with the configurations of window throughout the facade. That the proposed applied muttons at the windows and doors will closely match the details and dimensions of other windows throughout the facade. That the lettering and light fixtures at the historic gate were a limited element of a large composition. Therefore, the emission from the new design will not diminish the overall historic appearance of the gate. That the replacement of the copper gutter with black finished metal gutters that closely match the profile and details of the original gutters is a common alteration that did not eliminate a significant architectural feature of the building. And that the white finish of the speakers and proposed second floor light fixtures will have a discrete presence at the facade. However, I find that the details of the proposed gate and balcony are not well developed, that the proposed configuration of the picture window is not in keeping with the window configuration at the house of this style age and will draw undue attention to itself, that the wood timbering and bracket above the entrance that were covered and removed were a significant feature of the house. Light fixtures at the stone piers are out of scale with the piers excessive in number and not in keeping with the style of the house. Therefore, I recommend that the details of the gate, balcony, configurations of lights at the picture window be restudied in consultation with staff, that the wood timbering and brackets be restored, and the light fixtures at the piers be removed and the underlying stonework repaired.
Commissioner Jefferson, would you offer a second?
No second.
John?
Vice Chair Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
6 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
Thank you.
We're now going to our public hearing agenda, starting with public hearing item number 1, LPC 25-05001, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 264, Lot 13, 138 Joralemon Street in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. This is an Anglo-Italianate style house built in 1855. The application is to legalize the installation of windows without LPC permits.
Good morning, Commissioners. Caroline Kane-Levy from the Preservation Department. The application before you concerns a house located on Joralemon Street near Clinton Street in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. At the time of designation, At the time of designation, the facade had been altered with removal of the stoop and with parlor floor windows featuring 6/9 divided lights and upper floors featuring 2/2 divided lights. This configuration was in place at the time of the 1980 tax photo. You can see on the left, that's the earlier tax photo, what which existed at the time of designation. This is the designation photo. Again. And these are current conditions. At some point between 1980 and 2006, those windows were replaced without LPC permits. The present owner purchased the building in 2006 and replaced the 1/1 windows in place at that time with new double glazed, double hung 1/1 aluminum windows. He left the historic profiled wood brick molds uncovered. There have been no subsequent changes to those windows, and the application is to legalize the 2006 installation. Of the 6 townhouses, on the south side of Joralemon Street on this block, all are Anglo-Italianate in style and all have 1/1 windows. On the north side of the street, there's a mix of Federal, Greek Revival, and eclectic style townhouses, which all also have 1/1 windows, with the exception of one framed Federal style house. The owner of the building, Gary Gutman, is here to add anything. So if you have questions, would you like to add anything?
I guess you got the guy this time who actually replaced the windows. Actually, I bought the building in actually 2003. And when I bought it in 2003, it had the windows, well, 1/1. I had no idea that there were earlier windows of a different configuration. About 3 years into owning the building, I was getting a lot of complaints by the tenants because the windows were very unruly to open. They couldn't pivot into clean, and also they didn't have screens on them. So I said, okay. So I decided to replace the windows in kind, and I basically replaced them with new 1/1, which are insulated and easier to operate, and they were able to be have screen. They could also be tilted to be cleaned. At the time of me replacing them, the contractor really wanted me to actually remove the wood trim around the windows. I happen to like the wood trim, so I wound up leaving the wood trim. He then proposed to actually enclose the wood trim around the windows. I opted not to do that either, because I just thought it looked nice. So ultimately, I replaced what was in kind at the time when I owned the building. I purchased it in 2003. I knew I was in a landmark district, but I do apologize. I thought I was under the impression if I replace in kind, it would be a non-issue. So that's where we are today. I would request you respectfully consider approving the windows I've installed back in 2006.
Thank you. Questions, commissioners? Straightforward. I guess we could go to the room. Anybody in the room? Anybody in the room wishing to testify? Seeing that there isn't, Gregory Kala, do you want to tell us if there's anybody virtually?
Yes. Thank you, Vice Chair Bland. We have a couple of hands raised in our attendees list. The first we'll be hearing from is Judy Stanton from the Brooklyn Heights Association. Judy Stanton, I'm promoting you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Judy Stanton, speaking for the Brooklyn Heights Association. We do not support this application. Any approved window replacement should replicate the configuration and materials of the windows that were installed in this house's early 20th century renovation. The former parlor window configuration, which was discarded without a permit, is certain to date to the 1915 renovation by Slee and Bryson. The real estate record and builder's guide shows that the house's stoop was removed and the attic was built out at that time. We believe that former window configuration was intentionally selected in 1915 as part of an ensemble to harmonize with the design for the new entrance, surround, and taller building. Compare that window configuration as seen in the 1940 tax photo to the original windows on the house as shown in a 1903 photo. Both the 1903 and 1940 photos are attached to this letter, which I believe was distributed to commissioners over the weekend. On the second and third stories above the parlor, we think retaining the 2/2 windows was also intentional in the 1915 renovation, as was installing smaller 2/2 windows in the new fourth story former attic. That configuration was also discarded without a permit. As long as the 1915 entrance design remains in place, the house's window configuration should match what was designed at that time. Referring to whatever window configurations exist on other houses on the block is not relevant when we know precisely what was designed for this particular house when its design took its own path away from the original row. In addition, approved window replacements should be water-clad to match the historic windows. Currently, they're entirely metal. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. This proposal does not include any product specifications for the windows the applicant wishes to legalize. Without clear information, HDC is not able to judge appropriateness. We ask the applicant to return with more detailed information. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised. John Graham from the Victorian Society. Yes. So John Graham for the Victorian Society, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you. Hello, John Graham, are you with us?
Sorry. Good morning, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. Founded in New York City in 1966, the Victorian Society in America is dedicated to fostering the appreciation and preservation of our 19th and early 20th century heritage. The New York chapter promotes preservation of our historic districts, individual and scenic landmarks, interiors, and civic art. The Victorian Society opposes this proposed legalization for several reasons. The 2/2 wood windows that were removed at the upper floors were likely historic, if not original, typical of the configuration of a row house built in 1855. The multi-light parlor floor windows likely date from the removal of the stoop. The historic wood windows should have been assessed for condition and restored if possible. Second, the new windows appear more like storm windows in their dimensions, having very narrow stiles and rails. They don't look anything like historic or replacement windows that would be appropriate for this building. Finally, the finish on the new sash doesn't appear to match the finish of the painted brick moldings. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Vice Chair Bland.
Thank you. I'll ask the applicant if he'd like to respond to any of the testimony.
Yeah, I know they're putting a lot of weight on the fact that I need to go back to, vintage photographs. I was not the individual who took it out. I basically replaced the time. So that's my response.
Could you remind us when these windows were replaced initially? I think you said after 1980.
Time. It was in place in 1980. There's one of those photographs is a tax photo from 1980, and by that time it had between 1965 and 1980
It was replaced, so they've been there since then. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
No, I'm sorry. At some point between 1980 and 2006, those windows were replaced.
Yeah, that's what I remembered. Okay, thanks. Okay, any other questions, commissioners? If not, we're ready to discuss the issue. We want to start with Commissioner Jefferson. Close the hearing. Didn't know I opened it, but I guess I need a vote to close the hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Jefferson, and a second by Commissioner Master.
Second?
All right, thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? No, hearing's closed. Okay, now, Commissioner Jefferson, what are you feeling?
These are one of those perplexing questions, for me at least. I can go with 1/1 because when I look at the pictures, the rest of the block has 1/1. It's consistent. The question for me is the deviation from the detail of the window itself, the frame, the portion of it. And I can't tell what type of, what the issues are because I don't have any detail. And is that important? It is, but in this particular case, how important is it? And that's where I kind of, it's already there. It's a cost factor. So I'm ambiguous about it. I would tend to think it's appropriate to keep it as it is.
Commissioner Goldman.
I agree. I think that the application is kind of, those who wish to have it restored to a previous condition as shown in the tax photo are hanging their hat on the notion that the renovation that was done in 1915 was architecturally significant, and therefore that configuration of the windows should be held on to as a significant element of that renovation. And I guess, I mean, it's true that the design in 1915 was purposeful and was significant, but I mean, to my eye, because the brownstone detailing and material remain, because the brownstone row appears to be relatively uniform, and because the 1/1s relate to that kind of uniformity and context, the 1913 renovation doesn't seem like the kind that would have kind of reset the clock for me on that building, so I can accept it as is.
Thank you, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Well, first, I want to appreciate the owner coming in and being honest about what happened because, and given, I agree with the other commissioners, given the fact that all the rest of the block is 1/1, I can find this appropriate.
Commissioner Chapin?
I agree with the comments of the other commissioners, which lead me to feel also that it is approvable.
Commissioner Lutfi?
So I happen to agree with everything my fellow commissioners have said. I just would like to say a few other things. Number one, this is Brooklyn Heights. It's a neighborhood that is very fastidious about, its beautiful buildings and, to the applicant, as you can see, the community is engaged and commenting. So, when future changes are made to your building, it would be great. I know you now know, which is wonderful. But if you were to change your windows, I also think instead of coming to us for in kind, come to us for what we normally, what we recommend in terms of approval, which is either wood or, wood clad aluminum, as opposed to just aluminum. And then think carefully. It's in fact, a good mistake that you made just because aesthetically you happen to like, the detail that was there, that some of this remains, but aesthetically in the future, it's also important to think about, from a historic landmarks perspective, what's here and how you can do your best to preserve and enhance it.
Commissioner Master.
Yeah, I can support this. It's appropriate.
Okay. I think we're down to me. I can also support it. What saves it for me, frankly, is the retention of the wood surround. If that had been removed, I think it would be a non-starter for me. That would have to replace everything. I thought Commissioner Goldblum's explanation was very eloquent as well about the 1915 replacement then, et cetera. So with that in mind, I will ask Commissioner Jefferson to make the motion.
Sure. In the matter of LPC 25 05001 138 Joralemon Street, Brooklyn Heights, Historic. Applications to legalize the installation of windows without Landmark Preservation Commission permit. I note that the building scale, style, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historical character of the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the building was modified in the early part of the 20th century with the removal of its stoop, installation of a different parlor windows, and a new ground floor entrance, and the installation of a fire escape. Therefore, the replacement of the prior multi-light windows with 1/1 double hung windows is in keeping with the history of change. That the 1/1 configuration matches the configuration of the majority of the 19th century small-scale residential buildings along the block. That the historic profile wood brickwork were repaired and retained, and the windows and brick molds have a compatible dark finish. And that the work does not detract from the special architectural or historical character of the building, the streetscape, or the historic district.
Commissioner Goldblum, would you offer a second?
Second.
John, would you call the roll?
Vice Chair Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
7 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
Now move to the next item, public hearing item number 2, LPC 25-03062. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1398, lot 61, 132 to 134 East 64th Street in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is 2 row houses originally designed in the neo-Grec style, designed by James E. Ware and built in 1878 and later altered. The application is to combine the new buildings and remove party walls, modify the areaway, alter the front and rear facades, and construct a rooftop addition. I will note this was advertised as 2 neo-Grec style row houses. However, because of those alterations, it was actually indicated as having no style in the Upper East Side Historic District designation report.
Hello, Commissioners and Landmark staff. Thank you for hearing this application today. My name is Jackie Pudu-Vallon, JPD Preservation Consulting. I'm here today with the architect, Andreas Tomaridis, Pudu Design. 132 and 134 East 64th Street started their lives as 2 neo-Grec row houses, a row of 4. As Corey just explained, they were stripped of all significant architectural features in 1934, when both houses became multifamily dwellings. Now they're being combined at the interior to create a single-family residence. To do that, the proposal includes replacing portions of the party wall, resurfacing the front facades in a limestone-colored stucco, recreating all the historic decorative details, installing a stoop, altering a below-grade entrance, installing a new areaway fence, and constructing rooftop and rear yard additions. The houses are at the south side of East 64th, between Park and Lex, closer to Lex. The houses are on the edge of the Upper East Side Historic District, on this block, in that the neighboring apartment building to the east that faces Lexington is outside the district, as are the buildings behind these houses. Here for context are the houses in the streetscape. The 2 houses to the right are the ones that were built as part of the same row. At number 130, the altered townhouse that is the Edward Durrell Stone House. And 128 is the last remaining um, intact facade from this original row next to the Edward Durrell Stone House. That house is serving as the model to replicate the details for the facades at these houses. Here are existing conditions at the front facades. There are many layers of cream-colored paint on top of the brownstone-colored stucco. Based on this previous stucco color choice, it's reasonable to assume that the underlying stone is brownstone. And here are historic photos. The original, in which you can see in the 1940s tax photo, the center photo of the other houses from the row when they were not altered. It does look like it was brownstone. You can also see here on the left, the 1940s tax photo in which we already see the alteration to 132 and 134. And on the right is the 1980s tax photo. So again, the middle photo is also being used as inspiration for recreating historic details and also recreating the railings for the stoop.
Jackie, could you
Yes.
remind me if where the line is, what's in and what's out of the historic district?
Okay, so.
I'm sorry, I just got turned around. Which
That's all right,
way
sure.
is in?
Okay, well, in these photos, so these houses that you see my little cursor moving. So these houses are the subject houses. The apartment building next to them is outside the district.
So it's outside that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So heading west toward Park Avenue is district. Heading east toward Lexington is outside the
So
district.
someday it's possible that the Edward Durrell Stone House will come back to us for
Yes,
something or other. Interestingly enough, that'll be an interesting discussion, but not for today.
it
Thank
would
you.
be. So, okay, where was I? Go to the next one. Okay. So here are the existing and proposed front facades and elevation. The work at the front facade that we're asking you to review again is the installation of a stoop at 134, altering the basement level doorway at 132, installing a new areaway fence, and resurfacing the facade in a limestone colored stucco. The color of the stucco is for your review because that's a departure from the original substrate material, which was brownstone. So we're asking you to also approve the stucco color. Recreating historic details as shown on number 128, the Exton House that's not been altered in this row. Here are the existing and proposed elevations at just the lower two floors where you can see in more detail the proposed stoop at 134, which will again largely replicate the original in terms of height and projection and its details, its ironwork. We're proposing to replicate the original railings as seen in the tax photos and the existing at 128 again, and of course to also restore the doorway at the parlor level at 134. Here are the proposed front elevations in context with the neighbors. So again, the Edward Durrell Stone House and heading west, that's in the district. The apartment building you see next door is not in the district. So here are proposed stoop elevations, just to show you the details of that with of course, under stoop entrance gate. Here in plan, we're showing you the existing areaway in relationship to the existing areaway at 128, where there's still that original stoop left. So on the right, we're showing you the proposed plan where showing you how the new stoop would align with the existing stoop that's in front of 128. Regarding facade color, we're showing you again the historic photo, current condition photo, which again, based on how many layers of paint are on these buildings, I would say it's been painted a cream color for if not 100 years, close to it. And on the right, you see the rendering of the proposed color. For context, here's the south side of the block, showing you what the houses and their areaways, their railings look like throughout the rest of the block, as we head west toward Park Avenue. Again, a little bit closer to Park Avenue, where we end at the last row houses that are on this side of the street. And for additional context, this is what the street looks like across the street. This is the north side of the block, so looking directly across the street from these houses. And you'll see on both sides of the street, there is really a plethora of either limestone faced or limestone painted houses. There's also, so just to highlight some houses with actual limestone facades on this block. There's two here that had new limestone facades, actual limestone block facades, approved by the commission, 110 East 64th and 113 East 64th, as well as historic facades on this side of the street. And there's also, of course, as you well know, there's precedent within this district for approving new facades on no-style buildings, new facades built of actual limestone. So these are some examples. In the nearby Treadwell Farm Historic District, there is an example of a house where its brownstone painted facade was replaced with a limestone colored stucco in its resurfacing and restoration of details. So that's similar to what we're proposing today. Now switching gears, looking at the roof, here's existing conditions at the roof, looking north and south. The proposal is to construct a rooftop addition that will be set back approximately 14 feet from the front facade and approximately 12.6 from the rear facade. The rooftop addition will also feature a stairway bulkhead to the rear that will rise higher than the occupiable space portion of the addition, which you see in these plans. Oh, and I should mention, let me go back. Bernadette will kill me if I don't mention this. There's a couple of extended flues that are also that have also been mocked up associated with this work. Existing and proposed roof sections. The addition itself, the occupiable space portion will be about 11 foot 4 inches tall with a 36-inch parapet on top of it, with an interior floor to ceiling height of 9 foot 8 inches. The stairway bulkhead will rise about 21 feet tall. Existing and proposed elevations for the, proposed elevations for front and back. Existing building section with a sight line. Proposed sight line. As you can see, the gray areas indicate areas of additional addition to the building. So you're seeing the rooftop addition demonstrating through this sight line will not be visible over the front facade. There will be some excavation at the cellar. That excavation is not going to require underpinning. Here are existing and proposed axonometric views to show you what this addition at the roof will look like. Mock-up photos taken from the roof. Mock-up photos taken from across the street and as one is walking slightly west toward Park Avenue. I'd also like to mention in these photos, you can see there's a bit of brown horizontal on top of the building. That is the mock-up for the restored cornice, the projection of the restored cornice, shown in just using plywood. Here are additional photos looking, as we're walking farther west toward Park Avenue. The mock-up is not visible from these views either. No portions of the mock-up, not the flues, not the addition itself. And now we're at Park Avenue from the corner and from the center meridian on Park. Looking back and seeing nothing of the mock-ups. Where the mock-up does become visible is for about 5 feet when you're walking on the east side of Lexington, from the northeast corner of Lexington, just viewed in a very narrow sliver between these two large apartment buildings. So we zoomed in so you'd be able to see exactly what you're seeing, and it's going to be just a portion of the top corner. Of course, there is precedent within this district for approving other visible rooftop additions. This is 18 East 74th Street, which is approved in 2022. And this is 163 East 78th Street, which was approved in 2023. Now looking at the rear facade, this is the existing condition of the rear. More existing condition photos, looking down into the rear yard from the roof and looking at the apartment building to the south. And just to give you context, this is the entire view, looking east, south, west, looking west into the donut. So the proposal at the rear facade is really just to square off the bottom two floors of the existing sort of chamfered sort of projecting bays that are interesting on these rear facades. So squaring it off at the bottom, just at the center, and installing larger window openings, maintaining a hierarchy of fenestration by not touching any other windows on the facade. Here's that proposed rear in context with its neighbors. Existing and proposed building sections, again, for comparison. Here we're just demonstrating where there are additions within the block presently. You'll note that the purple indicates where there's other one-story rooftop additions. The houses just to the west of this row of 4 houses, those 2 houses got full floor additions. So those top floors of those houses, the 5th floor on each, is actually entirely an addition. And there are other 2-story and even 3-story additions within this block. Here's an axonometric view to show you what the additions will look like from the rear, at roof and the rear facade. Axonometric, or I should say, more like a color plan looking down in to see what the rear yard will look like. Materials palette, again, the finish for the front facade would be limestone colored stucco. Same brick to match the existing elsewhere on the house. A wood rear fence, painting the ironwork black. These are just sections for the proposed additions, the walls. Structural sections, details. Now, as I mentioned earlier, part of this proposal is to replace in-kind portions of the party wall, mainly because the party wall that's between these 2 houses currently has a 12-inch sag. So here we're just showing you the existing and proposed plans for each floor, where again, we'll also be maintaining a wall toward the front of the house so that if someone's looking at these houses from the sidewalk, it wouldn't be perceptible that these are becoming one house at the interior. 4th floor. And of course, there is also precedent in this district for unifying 2 houses at the interior by removing the party wall. This is 15-17 East 77th Street, which was approved in 2023. And that's it. That's our proposal. We look forward to your questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions? Yes, sir. Mr. Jefferson.
So on page 11, on the left-hand side,
Yes, sir.
the current condition, the capital of that pilaster, so that sticks out, right? I mean, it's kind of the capital sticks out. But in the rendering, it doesn't seem like it's doing that. Is it been removed or cut back?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, can you tell me which capital do you mean? Where are we talking? Are we talking about the center of the?
No, under the bay windows or the cantilever.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right. So that seems to be sticking out as a muscular capital, but I don't see it in the rendering. Is it cut back?
Well, even that's interesting to bring up, because if you look at the photo from the 1940s, that condition's even changed from what the shape of it was in the 1940s.
Jackie,
Why don't I
can say.
Yeah,
that
well, come,
before-
you answer.
I'm Andreas.
No, come over here. Say your name for the record.
Andreas Tomaitis, I'm gonna be the architect of record. The intent is to replicate whatever was there before. The rendering may be a little bit off, but it's not to It's a structural, it's a concrete
So
structural
the,
pillar.
the muscularity is still there.
Yes, it's actually a
Okay, but
concrete column that supports the pavement.
it looks very flat in your rendering. There's no,
Yes, you're right that it's supposed to be a little bit.
Yeah.
It will look exactly how it was before.
Well, before when? Original or now? Original. So you're going to return it to that sort of fan shape.
To what's going on 128.
And that's what's at 128, the original. Yes, I see. Okay, thank you. Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Goldblum.
So I just want to be real clear on that point. Even though your drawings don't show aspects of the detailing on the building, on the I guess the 132, whatever, or 128, that your intention is to replicate the trim and detailing on 128 completely and fully.
Our intention is to take details from these pictures and what's existing right now on 128, replicate it on our side.
Good. All right. So that's clear.
but that's different from,
Oh, it's quite different from what from what's on the drawings. Quite different. But I'm sure he can work with staff to correct those things. But you've explained why you think the limestone coloration would be appropriate in the district. Why are you doing it? Why not do it in the brownstone?
It's a pretty subjective question, but my train of thought would be the building has been beige for most of its life, or limestoney, so I don't think it should return to brown. It's actually a very dark block, so we would like to get a little bit more brightness. And also the only building that we're actually retaining in the block was actually painted also yellow, beige. So I think it kind of makes it feel more cohesive than returning it back to brown.
Okay. And it seems that the pattern that's shown in the tax photo indicates that the brownstones, when they were paired, shared a kind of ultra wide stoop. You've chosen not to do that. Why not?
Because we decided that we wanted to keep them up here, that they're two separate buildings, and we found it a little bit odd having that extra wide stoop. So we decided to keep one stoop on one side and have a basement entrance on the other side.
Okay. And Jackie had said that it's sagging by a foot.
It's actually significantly sagging. The floors, the joists, the staircase, all of them are sagging in the middle of the building.
Right, but it seems like you've retained a center wall in much of your floor plan.
We are replacing it. We're rebuilding.
Right, but theoretically, has it settled? Is it structurally sound in its current configuration apart from the
No, that's why we're replacing.
sagging?
That's why we're going to remove it and put it back.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Commissioner Lutfi.
Just in keeping with with your thinking about going back to the 1928 design, what made you decide not to do multi-lights in the windows?
That is also a good question. I think that given the date of this building, it was likely originally built with 1/1 windows. I think the multi-lights that were put in the 30s were an aesthetic choice. I don't think that wouldn't have been, smaller lights like that wouldn't have been appropriate to houses built in the late 19th century, because by then they had progressed past having to put in smaller lights.
Mm.
So I think the 1/1 is actually the correct window configuration.
But we don't know. I mean, that's conjecture.
Well, it's based on just knowledge of technology that they were using in the late 19th century, that they were using 1/1s for construction of houses in general by the 1870s, 1880s.
Is it also what 128 has? Is that
Yes.
1/1?
Let's get to it. Good question.
I mean, the model here is 128. Yeah. Yep.
I have one more thing, a comment. Could we just go to the rendering of Well, actually, I just want to look at the page just for one. Let's look at the new rendering. Forget it.
I mean, this sheet?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. That's great. So, I really appreciate the fact that what you're trying to do is retain the sense of the two buildings. And, that sense was very distinct on the far left because the entrances were exactly the same. And I also appreciate the fact that, you might want to have a front stoop here. But what I think happens on the right of the rendering is that let's say the entryway, the entry door, which would signal, just in theory, that this still is another building, looks like a basement door. And so I am thinking you might want to consider a door that has a little more character and speaks a little bit more toward making this look holistically like another building and retains that sense.
You're right. I think that's a great comment. I think for this to read accurately like two separate houses, one having received a basement level entrance, that entrance should have more detailing, more of a heft to its surround. So yes, I think we'd be happy to work with the staff on that.
Other questions, Commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
Yeah, if you look at the image of 132 on the left-hand side, I mean, the drama of this facade is the column coming out and spraying out to support the bay windows. And in your proposed facade, all that is gone. So this facade doesn't represent anything of what
I understand exactly your concern. Again, the intention is to replicate what's on 128. The rendering is just like one representation of what we think. We can work with staff to get closer to what's there on 128. It will look closer to our elevations rather than the rendering.
Okay.
Other questions? If not, we'll go to anyone in the audience who might wish to give testimony.
Yeah, but if he's saying that he's gonna spray out. Yeah, yes, it's a lot of totally different. That's hard to do. Cause see how it hits a window, set back.
I'm not allowed to ask the question. I just was wondering how that's been considered. And why it seemed to be necessary to have additional commission, which is not consistent with the original. It's not for what people of us that are. Yeah, my testimony is, I think it will have a very tough impact by having an addition to number of neighbors who will be light.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to give testimony? If not, Gregory Calla will.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bland. We have a few hands raised in our attendees list. The first we'll be hearing from is Zainab Turan from the Friends of the Upper East Side. Zainab Turan, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Zainab Touran here, speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side. Our Preservation Committee appreciates the proposal's retention of the original row house proportions on the front facade, matching 128 East 64th Street, thereby affirming the building's historic character on this distinguished and varied block, particularly right next to a prominent modernist design. However, the committee has concerns about the proposed areaway, specifically the proposed stoop and fencing, which extend across the property line on the side of the 11th-story building, creates a narrow sidewalk as shown on the first floor plan. Therefore, we recommend that the applicant redesign this section of the sidewalk. We find the proposed stucco limestone appropriate. Although it does not match the original color of the facade, it fits within the block. In keeping with the preservation of the building's original character, we request the original multi-pane window designs be retained. Unless they're not original. The committee finds the rooftop addition at 21 feet above the existing rooftop bulky, even though it is only minimally visible from the public thoroughfare. Friends believes that placing such a disproportionately large addition on the roof of these two moderate row houses for a single family home should not be approved by the commission. Additionally, the committee has reservations about the rear yard design. We cannot support the excessive glazing on the first and second floors, nor the obscure distinction between two separate row house volumes on the floors in the proposed design. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from John Graham from the Victorian Society in New York. John Graham, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. This application raises some important questions concerning what constitutes a significant alteration and when changes to the streetscape might outweigh changes to an individual building or pair of buildings. The public notice for this hearing omits the important fact included in the designation report that these buildings had been redesigned by the New York firm Boak and Paris in 1934. Commissioners, Boak and Paris was a firm which was active from 1927 through the Depression. Both partners trained in the office of Emery Roth, and they designed many buildings which are now New York City landmarks. In Anise Alt's 2014 book on the firm, Boak and Paris, Boak and Rod, Elihu Rose is quoted as saying, "Boak was an unsung architect who was incapable of doing a bad drawing, a bad design. No one is comparable. Boak just had taste. He had class." Looking at the current photos, which show the facade of the one building in the row, which retains its original 1878 facade, 128 East 64th, it's easy to see 132 and 134 as stripped boxes. But the tax photos on board 5 show that all the important details of the Boak and Paris 1934 redesign, including the removal of the stoops, the construction of the arch-headed doors with transoms at the areaway level, the multi-light double-hung windows at all the openings, and the continuous incised lines just below the parapets are intact. The photos of the streetscape also show a microcosm of 80 years of row house design, starting with James Ware in 1878 through Boak and Paris in 1934, and finally to Edward Durrell Stone's 1958 facade at 130, a grouping which itself seems worthy of preservation. The applicant's proposed single stoop instead of the original double is a reasonable response to the problems of joining two narrow row houses. The other changes to the front facade are based on the best sort of historic evidence. It does not appear that the rooftop addition will be visible. Restoring the historic pediments matching the one which was in place in 1930 at 130 would further reduce any possible visibility. And the work on the rear will leave the upper two floors intact. But if the redesign is to be based on the 1878 original design, the proposed limestone finish is not appropriate. This would not have been found on an 1878 neo-Grec house. The finish should be brownstone. However, we believe that Boak and Paris's 1934 redesign meets the Commission's standards for a significant alteration, We therefore urge a full discussion of the significance of these existing facades before moving on to considering the proposed extensive alterations. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds the new proposal for this building intriguing, but we cannot support it as proposed because it does not recognize and incorporate the significant design facade that currently exists. In reviewing the proposal, one crucial detail was missing from the LPC's docket, that the present facade, which is proposed to be stripped, was designed in 1934 by a prolific NYC architectural firm, Boak and Paris. Notable for their apartment house designs and for the individually landmark Metro Theater, the firm was well entrenched as a major architectural designer in Manhattan by the 1930s, at the time that they were hired to complete this project. The impetus of this intervention follows a typical Depression-era situation in which owners converted single-family row houses into multiple dwellings in order to make these larger properties economical. This is precisely what happened here, except that offices were added in the addition to the creation of multiple apartments. The design facade presented in the tax photo would have been about 5 years old at the time of the photograph and remains intact today. There's an argument to be made that the 1930s intervention is significant on its own and bears the hallmarks of a skilled architect of its time. A pared down facade, including the removal of cornice, thinly profiled fenestration that harkens to the interwar industrial aesthetic, and the removal of the stoops for its new program. Collectively, these elements communicate a symmetrical and unified facade. HDC appreciates that the architect who is proposing the current facade is a skilled practitioner. We believe, therefore, that an appropriate design would incorporate the 1930s facade and its rigorous bilateral symmetry into a new single-family home. We believe some interesting manipulation of the central entry and ground floor could offer a way for appropriateness and reverence to coexist. We ask the Commission to work with the applicant to pursue further design options.
Okay. Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval of the facade restoration, reconstruction of the stoop, the rooftop addition, and the alterations of the rear facade, and denial of the installation of the windows and the construction of the fence. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Vice Chair Bland.
Thank you. And I'll ask now for a response by the applicant's team. And I think it should be interesting to hear your response to the idea of retaining all or part of the 1934 or whatever it was addition or changes.
Right. Thank you, Commissioners. First off, to the comments about blocking light and air. As Commissioners know, you can only make your decisions based on what is visible from the public thoroughfare, not visible from private views, private apartments, other private property. As I showed in the presentation, the Commission has many times over approved very similar rooftop additions. And as I'm sure we all know, this historic district and other historic districts also approving rooftop additions that may actually result in blocking of someone's window that happens to be on a lot line wall, which is there as a bonus. Secondly, regarding this question of the significance of this facade, I'd like to remind Commissioners that the designation report does call this a no-style facade. There's really no recognition or significance given to this 1934 alteration by the Commission in that respect. Secondly, I think anyone who knows New York City history can think of examples where really accomplished architects were hired to do jobs where they just needed to create something that would be very low maintenance for someone who is a property owner looking to turn a building into rental apartments. And I think that's what happened in 1934. I think, unfortunately, we don't have documentation of what the condition was of the facades prior to this photo from the 40s. But I think it's safe to assume that when someone's turning a building into rental apartments, they're trying to spend less money down the line on their buildings. So I think they were really looking for these architects to strip away and unify the look of the building, but also create a condition where they wouldn't have to, put much maintenance into a stone facade. Secondly, regarding multi-let windows, we discussed that in your questions and comments. I do think that 1/1 windows is the correct configuration to go with here if we're trying to restore the look from the late 19th century. Let's see. Regarding the amount of glazing at the rear, I think that is also reasonable considering other commission approvals for rear additions where you've often approved larger masonry openings at the lower floors and left the upper floors as discrete punched openings. As to the limestone color itself, I think the limestone color will be more in keeping with the unique history of this little row of houses and the fact that there's a prevalence of limestone color on this block.
What about the fence? Have you,
Oh, yes, thank you for reminding me. The areaway fence itself, correct me if I'm wrong, but the areaway fence itself, if we weren't doing any other alterations to this building, we could actually get a staff level permit for a new areaway fence. I think the work for an areaway fence would meet the rules. I know I've gotten staff level permits for areaway fences under the new rules.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, we would need documentation that what's being proposed is the original sort of area of the fence and extents, and we do believe that is the case here. It seems out of place, I think, now because it was removed and the apartment building doesn't have it, so it would sort of abruptly stick out from the property line. But in fact, yes, staff could issue that as restorative work, sort of apart from the larger scope of work.
okay, questions now?
Can I ask a dumb question that may or may not be relevant to our considerations? Why is there a bulkhead on the bulkhead?
I'm gonna have the architect
We've
answer that
seen,
question.
I don't know how many rooftop additions where they accomplished that with a ladder.
To be quite honest with you, I was not a big fan of it either. The issue becomes once you're over 4 stories, you need a rooftop access.
And why, I don't know, I would suggest that you look back at that because I mean, we've seen rooftop additions of this scale every week, and they don't seem to have stairs going to the roof of what is the rooftop addition?
The building code says any building that's over 4 stories needs to have a rooftop access, cannot be in the form of a ladder. That's where the issue is.
Go for it, whatever.
I didn't want it if it makes it feel any better.
Any other questions by the commissioners? Then I think it's time to close the hearing. Commissioner Master, would you offer a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Lutfi, a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So the hearing is now closed and we'll start our discussion. Sarah always cues this up brilliantly. I'm not going to do that because I won't do it as well as she can. But I think one of the most important things for us to come to a decision on is the 1930s alterations. Should those be changed or retained? So we want to start with Commissioner Goldblum.
Sure. Okay. So that is the crux of the matter here, I think. The determination as to it's a very unusual setup, right? This used to be a row of individual single-family homes, and over time, stuff happened, and now it's going to go back to being a single. These two are going to go back to being a single-family home, and we struggle here a lot with the notion of retaining the identity of the original building as an individual house when it's being combined into a mansion. And that's the case here as well. This house is unusual because the original configuration played with the idea of pairing in a very uh, atypical way for brownstone rows by actually pairing two of them together in the original configuration with the paired stoop, the kind of this mirror symmetry. There was a kind of joining and blurring of the line between the two houses intrinsic to the original design. I mean, for me, I think I agree with Jackie in terms of the interpretation of the the aesthetic significance of the 1930s modification, or the stripping of the building and the eradication of the stoops. For me, it doesn't, and I think I will admit that that is an aesthetic judgment. I think that when I see them, I tend to view these things as, was the renovation in the 20th century, was it one that left over a positive visual legacy of an aesthetic intent that spoke to the time in which it was done, or was it an erasure or an effacing of earlier stuff? And I think that and I grant that that is a subjective personal definition that I use to think about these things. But I think by that definition, this modification fails to rise to the level of one that merits are protecting it. So I think that the notion of restoring the detail is acceptable to me. That said, I feel that the drawings as we see here and as we saw elsewhere do not reflect the level of detail and care that would be necessary to effect that kind of restoration properly. So I think the staff has to look, I mean, all you got to do is look at the way the bay window on the building on 128 is actually built versus the way it's drawn here with pilasters and returns and panels. That very prominent column underneath has a scroll detail, and it's very elaborate. And if you're gonna do it, do it, and make it so that it replicates. I mean, there's pilasters to the sides of the windows on the second on the main floor. It's a very sophisticated and striking design from that period. And I think that if you're going to do it, and that they could do that with staff. I don't think that's an issue. And furthermore, I think that the restoration of the detail will actually enhance the stone house, which, you know, benefits from contrast. So I think from all vantage points, for me, the using of 128 as a model is appropriate. I question the choice of the limestone color. I think that if you're going to, you know, that if you're trying to restore a building to that period, it's a somewhat selective choice to have done that. But I guess I can live with it because we've done it many times in the past. And it's kind of the way that the Upper East Side districts seem to go. I can accept it, especially because there were examples in that style of limestone buildings, even if this wasn't one of them. I do push back, though, however, on the stoop. I think that the issue that Jeannie raised about the non-stoop side having a stripped look to it is, I think, bizarre. And I think that if you're going to make a mansion out of the pair, the opportunity to have a double stoop is something that a lot of other folks who have done this would probably have killed to do. And it's an opportunity to restore a sense of the original architecture that is being bypassed. And I don't think I would withhold approval because of it. Personally, I'd vote for it if they didn't do it, but I think it's foolish not to. I think the rear yard modifications are acceptable and well within the kind of work that we approve. The fact that they retain the top couple of floors and what is, again, a very unusual rear yard configuration, I think is significant. I think the relative invisibility of the rooftop addition is acceptable. I find the bulkhead bizarre, given, I don't know how the other 5,000 rooftop addition applicants have avoided that, but that's between you and the DOB. So I would not find that in any way inappropriate.
Thank you. Mr. Ginsburg.
Well, let me talk about what we agree on first. I think the rooftop addition and the rear yard changes are fine. I disagree with Commissioner Goldblum. I do not think of the way the building looks today as no style. I think if you think about what was happening in the late 20s and early 30s with the beginnings of the international style, the modern movement, I think that's pretty nice renovation. And so I think going back to say it's always an issue of what period you pick. But for 90 years, the building has looked like this. If you want to put in a stoop within that or work on the entrances, I think that would be acceptable, but I don't think going back to the building two doors down and recreating that is appropriate.
Commissioner Chapin.
Okay. I think that, I think it's the rooftop and the rear are appropriate. And I think that the restoration, personally, I don't find that the 1930s changes, which were mainly removing detail and sort of smoothing it down, really established a design frame that I think has to be preserved. I can imagine, I certainly have seen situations where I felt differently, but I agree with Commissioner Goldblum on that it is appropriate in this case for them to restore detail going toward the existing row house. And I may be influenced somewhat by the fact that that still exists, but I think it's appropriate. I do agree that and obviously the applicant agreed that they need to work closely on the detail and develop something more with the door and the surround in terms of trying to restore the sense of that period. But I'm sure that the applicant can do that working with the staff. So is there anything else I need to comment on? I think that's okay. So no, well, I mean, I don't recall anything significant that I didn't.
No, I think you had it. I guess the fence is.
Both of them.
Yep.
Fence again, going to the details that are.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Look, I think this is a situation where I'm very happy to hear that the applicant is going to be working very closely with staff on the details so that the some of the things that gave the design on the left its character and presence will be retained and will help to keep this newly combined structure. It will give it some will retain a nice identity for it or create a slightly modified one. I do have to say I am sorry to see the two entrances leaving on the far left. I mean, many people, keep their, put their stairwells on the interior. And I think from a holistic standpoint, there's unity here of the two structures, but there's also something that defines them as separate entities. That's why I made a special comment. Not saying it has to be that way. I'm just saying it's my preference, and I happen to agree that the brownstone color is would be my preference, although I can approve the limestone. That's why I made a particular point about that door at the base of the building on the right, because otherwise I definitely believe that you're losing this. You're losing the sense that this is a separate building. I think so as we've all been saying, it's imperative that the applicant work with staff on the details that they say they want to incorporate into the final product here. And I do believe that that also includes the fence. In addition to the door. And I am absolutely fine with the rooftop addition. It's really not that visible. Except, in a slight way, from a like oblique angle at a distance. And I think the applicant has done a very good job on the rear of the facade, and it's in keeping with what we generally approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Master?
Yeah, let me start with the rooftop addition. I think that the applicant has done a good job in showing that it's not visible, maybe from a slight oblique angle. And I would note that it's adjacent to a tall apartment building. So the rooftop addition and the bulkhead are appropriate. In terms of the rear yard addition, I believe that the rear yard addition goes out the same depth as what exists. And in terms of the glazing, that's typical of what we approve. And on the upper two levels, they've retained what we have. So the rooftop addition is appropriate. In terms of the front facade, I agree with Commissioner Goldblum. I think that the changes in the 1930s don't warrant keeping. I think that the limestone facade is fine. I think the applicant has shown that we've approved limestone facades in cases like this, and that a lot of the block is a lighter color. I do like Commissioner Lutfi's suggestion about doing a little bit more with the door at the base to delineate that they are two separate buildings. And I appreciate that the applicant has recreated or is planning to rebuild the center wall throughout most of the building. So I think that's it. I think overall I can find this appropriate. Again, I echo the other commissioner statements that they need to work very closely with the staff on the details.
Thank you, Commissioner Jefferson.
So the confusion for me is that if you go back to the existing, that image, or you stay with the image they have, the new image, the color, the limestone color works on their image because it's softer. This seems to be kind of a neoclassic simplification of form. This kind of not as muscular as the original one. So if they decide to go back to the original, then the limestone color doesn't work as well, because it's the brownstone is muscular. It tends to make emphasize the upward thrust, emphasize the detail and the structure, right? The limestone kind of simplifies it, uniforms it, makes for a beautiful surface. So that decision has to be made. That's point A. Once you decide on what detail they want to use, then just go with that. The rooftop addition, I think, is not very visible from outside And I can accept the rooftop addition. The front fence, I think is appropriate, quite handsome, I think, to lend it. The rear facade is acceptable. And I think it works well with the program of the plan on the inside. So to combine the two buildings and remove party wall, appropriate. Modify the areaway, appropriate. What are the front facade to be decided, worked out by the architect. Rooftop addition, appropriate.
Well, it's important that you'd help us decide, because you might be a swing vote here. Should the 1930s facade remain and protected, or are you okay to?
I would rather see my preference is back to the 1930s.
To keep the 1930s. It's a change that occurred, but it's been there for nearly 100 years. Right, that's the essential
Vice Chair,
question, I think. That
Can
we
I
have.
jump in for a second?
Please.
So just because of the two commissioners who are looking at this and are indicating a desire to see the existing facade retained, just some background so you understand. So these, as was stated by the applicant, these are considered no-style buildings in the designation report. That was nomenclature that was adopted specifically for the first time for this district back in the day when they were trying to give property owners some sense of certainty as to whether they're building, what they could do with their building in the future. And under the rules at the time, or the protocol, staff could approve the demolition of no-style buildings. That has since been modified by commission practice. We don't allow staff to demolish these buildings except if there's been an approved LPC design. But the designation board did identify these as non-contributing. That said, the commission has over the years, it retains the authority, you all to sort of look at things anew, and there certainly has been scholarship and other advocacy for looking at, these sort of modified Upper East Side townhouses or row houses as perhaps being significant. So I just wanted to provide that as sort of a background, that in general, the commission has approved a lot of demolition for no-style buildings. In fact, almost all of them have been.
I'm a bit confused because I think when we were talking about the proposal, he said he wanted to try.
No, I think, but Commissioner Bland was, Vice Chair Bland was asking you whether you thought that the style on the left is, that the design on the left should be retained.
That's
Yeah,
the
right.
essence of
That's
the problem.
You mean the lower portion, the whole thing?
Right.
Yes, that's the issue.
Yeah. So the Victorian one, which is to the right of Edward Verrell Stone, is the before. That's the during, and the question is, what should the after be?
I favor the proposal. I thought the proposal was badly. So I thought it should correct the images of the drawing to show the muscularity of the pillar.
Of the Victorian version.
The Victorian version, but that one. But to restore the Victorian. version.
Right.
So you're in support. I'm just trying to,
Yeah,
okay, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I don't understand what you're saying either. So, okay, well, that's my camp. I'm in that camp, and I think Commissioner Goldblum and others have established very well. I think it's a personal vision, a personal idea here of whether that 30s addition or alteration is significant enough to maintain it. It's maybe close, but in my judgment, it's not close enough to hold it. I also have this idea that scenographically, you might say, on the street, I think it would be very interesting to return these two buildings to as close as we can get to 128 so that we can really read, the public can really read these four buildings, one of which was really significantly changed before landmarks came along. I wonder what we would have done to that applicant. Um, but nonetheless, I think there's an educational purpose served here by showing, yes, there were four original and one was really radically changed, but the other three are pretty much the same. Now, the same except for the fact that two of them are now being combined into one house. So it can't be identical, but it can be very close. And I think using the model of 128 as the model of almost all the detail, including the windows, et cetera, the stoop, et cetera, which is what the staff is going to be focusing very closely on, is an appropriate thing. So, and I'll say that the rear is fine. I think the rear is actually quite beautiful. And the rooftop addition, if there's any way at DOB you can get rid of that stair going up so high, you should, but otherwise, I guess it's appropriate insofar as appropriateness here. So with that, Michael Goldblum, are you?
So are we good on the color as limestone?
Yeah.
There was, I think someone said that they thought the
Yeah,
brownstone should go
that's
back.
true. That's true. Somebody said the brownstone was. I mean, my thought is that we're going to keep it. The three ought to look alike. But yeah, that's right. You did say that. So you're okay with.
Okay.
All right.
And one stoop, not two.
Right.
Yeah, but increase the
so.
details on the arch for the lower one, for the other.
Yes, and yeah, working with staff, just
Got it. Okay.
better detailing.
Right. Okay. Will do. Regarding 132 to 134 East 64th Street, the application is to combine buildings and remove party walls, rebuild party walls, modify the areaway, alter the front and rear facades, and construct rooftop addition. I note that the buildings are not ones for which the Upper East Side Historic District was designated, and that they are identified as having no style in the Upper East Side Historic District designation report. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the 20th century alterations to the front facade, including stripping, resurfacing of the original brownstone and its features, are not unique or representative of exceptional details or craftsmanship. Therefore, the proposed work will not eliminate any significant later alterations. The design and details of the proposed lintel stoop, trim, and cornices will recall the historic features and support the unity of the row. That the proposed light-colored finish of the stucco will be consistent with later 20th century redesigns within this historic district, and that the light finishes of the neighboring two houses in the original row, that the modifications to the basement entrance and adjustments to the height and stoop we will integrate it into the facade composition, that the proposed rooftop addition will be set back from the front and rear facades. The rear yard addition will not rise to the top floor of the building and will therefore maintain a sense of the building's original volume. That none of the work at the roof and rear facades will be visible from the public thoroughfares except for limited oblique views of a portion of the rooftop addition from a distance, that the rooftop addition will be simple in form and design and neutral in finish, and will have a discrete presence in the streetscape views. The proposed rear yard addition, inserted in between the two existing bays at the lower two floors, will not project into the rear yard farther than the existing projecting bays, and therefore will not further diminish the central green space. The uniformity of the projecting bays, which will remain intact at the upper floors, will be maintained at these buildings throughout the row. That the proposed rear addition and associated facade modifications will feature matching masonry materials, typical proportions, and a center pier which will harmonize the facade with the facade and maintain a sense of division between the buildings. That only limited sections of the party wall near the middle and end and rear of the building will be removed without reinstallation of new central walls, and that the change will not be perceptible from the street, and the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the buildings or historic district. However, the applicant will work with the staff to carefully examine, refine, and develop details that recall and to the greatest extent possible mimic the detailing on building number 128 to the west of these two buildings, and that the
entrance, the second
the entrance on 132 will at the lower level, at the basement level, will have detail elaborated to be commensurate with a building that had its stoop removed at a later time, as one can see in other examples in the historic district.
Great. Well, Commissioner Master, would you offer a second?
Second.
All right.
Vice Chair Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Nay.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi, Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 6 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Break for lunch. We have 2 more. We'll do those 2 right after lunch. So let's come back at 1:15.